Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sanderlanche podcast. Today, we are talking about The Lost Metal, Book 4 of the Mistborn Era 2, and we read chapters 50 through 57. So 8 chapters this time. It was a big chunk. I am Data, and with me is...
Jamie.
Joe. And Dak.
Yep, we're all back this time. Everybody's feeling okay today. Yay.
Yeah, I mean, mentally, I'm maybe not the best, but, it's fine.
Well, you can only ask for so much at a time. But in these chapters, we get Marasi, Moonlight, and Twin Soul get into a fight or two. We find out, I think, pretty much with certainty, the true identity of Midnight. And Wax and Wayne, or mainly Wax, really, chases down some trucks to look for evidence, and then gets some beer. And finally, Marasi finds something that we've been looking for a long time now. So hang on to something, everybody. The Sanderlanche is about to begin.
No man can truly outlast all the mistakes of his past. There's no haven here for me that's safe from my memories. But when your borrowed time is through, I'll be with you. Redemption.
So yeah, a lot of chapters this week. A lot of I don't know, a decent amount of stuff happening. Some interesting action bits and stuff. What did you guys think of these 8 chapters?
Yeah, we're definitely getting into the shorter, choppier chapters, which is that, I think I've said every book, it's the exciting phase. Things are happening quickly. We know the lights are, the sun's going down and tonight's the night. It's all going to come to an end. So also some pretty cool visuals in this one. Twin Souls, Rockman was quite cool. Oh, and the women, we have a resolution on where they are. Hooray. I was so excited that we finally got there and it's actually been addressed, and that just made me really, really happy to have it confirmed. But to have, Shai's identity confirmed as well, what was having a look at, her take on an Elantrian was kind of fun as well. Yeah, I really liked all the little bits, and I feel like I'm so glad we read all of the books that we did read. I mean, you wouldn't have had a clue that they were going to be brought up in here, but it was really nice to kind of see them all come together. If you hadn't read Elantris and the short stories that we've read, like, you would be like, okay, awesome.
Yeah, that would have made no sense if we hadn't read Elantris and Emperor's Soul. We'd have no idea what was going on right now.
Yes, it would make absolutely no sense. So stoked that we read those when we did.
Yeah, I think that we would not be reading this book if we hadn't already read Elantris, and I was sitting here thinking, like, should we read this book next? Should we not? I think that it would have to be a no if we hadn't read those things already.
Oh, 100%. We would have to wait. Yeah, it wouldn't have the same impact. We'd read it and be like, cool, there's some names and some things. That's fun. And then, whenever you'd scheduled it later in the path, it would be like, oh.
That you guys don't know if there's other things that are in those other books that we haven't read that you've missed out on so far. So there could be something equally as interesting that you're like.
There could, but you decided to leave it.
I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like if there was something equally as interesting, we'd know that we were missing out on something, because these are all main characters to the story at this point.
Yeah, it's like it's like a background thing. They didn't exactly shy away from showing off the soul stamps and Shai.
So a major story point here is like turning on Shai using her powers. So it would be
if we hadn't read that.
If it was something that big from a book we hadn't read yet, we'd just be like, the fuck was that? And you'd be like, yeah,
what was that? Huh?
What could it be?
I realize that we're quite early in the episode, but did you have anyone like suggest not to read Lost Metal, like of our listeners, like to wait, or was everyone pretty much on board, or you just didn't throw the question out?
That is an excellent question. I don't know that I asked people like, hey, what do you think we should do? But that obviously doesn't stop people in like the Discord from giving opinions, because we paused for 2 weeks to read Perfect State while I decided, are we going to read this next? So everyone knew that it was a question that was raised. And I think most of the people were like, yeah, you can read this next. There were a couple of people who were like, well, I don't know. I mean, I could kind of see it going either way. But I think more people were like, yeah, you can go ahead and read this.
Cool.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, I feel like we've read, and of course we haven't got to the end yet, but I feel like we've read just enough to be kind of comfortable in this book. The one guy that we didn't know anything about, you basically were able to explain, like, yeah, he's not really in any major works at this point, or his type of species or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have made a difference how long we waited, because that is not information we would have gotten unless, you know, a new book gets published that we don't know about he's working on yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, everybody, even people who've read all this stuff, would be on the same page with that guy.
Yep, more or less.
Yeah, I enjoyed these chapters. I think my favorite part, honestly, was the kind of weirdness, like quasi Falloutness of the community. That was kind of a really cool thing. And
it is kind of Fallout, huh? I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense for what we had seen before, because we were theorizing like they were making the movies to show autonomy, and it's like, well, does that make a lot of sense? I don't feel like it does. So this made much more sense, that the reason they created this stuff was for these people. And it also makes sense why they wouldn't run away, because they believe something else has happened. So yeah, that was a really cool kind of idea and way to pull that off. And especially because, you know, we're talking about something that happened 4 books ago. Not only that, but, you know, as you've told us, it's like the original book Brandon wasn't even sure if there would be like a sequel to that book when he wrote it. So you're talking about something 4 books ago, and he wasn't even sure when he wrote them getting kidnapped and then didn't resolve it, that this was they were going to have a resolution to it. So that was pretty cool. And so I'm excited to see where that portion goes. Yeah, and her becoming an Elantrian, I was just like, oh, that's so awesome. I was like, way to successfully use the pure door. And it's funny to me, and as a reader, and I'm sure it is to anybody who read that section, it's like, we know what's going on as a reader, but our character doesn't, which is kind of funny. It's like, oh, we know what she just did, but the character doesn't know what she just did. So it was a fun moment.
From Marisai's perspective, that is like the most bizarre thing.
Yes.
She turns into a completely different person. Not only that, but like a glowy skinned like being who can like draw stuff with their hand and make magic.
Right. And interesting to note, the most interesting part to me about it was that somehow that Elantrian knew they were on a different planet, so they changed the way that their magic works so it would work on Scadrial, which I thought was really interesting. I wonder how she kind of figured that out. But
yeah.
We've had a couple of times where Brandon's written about something that we, the reader, know what's happening, but the character doesn't. And I think it's really cool the way that he does that, because you're getting bits of information, even like the pronunciation of names and words and stuff. And you're like, he'll change the spelling. I think he did it with Melan, that she was Milan when we first got introduced to the character, and it was that penny drop moment that it's like, oh, it's their understanding of how it sounds rather than knowing how it's spelt. And I think they did that a little bit with Shy as well. And then talking about the Shayode, even if we're saying it right, I don't even know, but I find it really fun to read when he's done that, because you know he's just messing with people, and it's awesome. And the characters are going, I have no idea what's going on, and we're going, we do, it's awesome. I think he does that really well.
Yeah, that's a good point. That I hadn't really thought of. Is you're right. When we first meet Melan, it's like we're in Wax's head, and so we see the way it's spelled is the way Wax thinks the word she just said would be spelled. So it doesn't give away, you know, with the structure of the word that it's a Kandra. And the same thing here. That's a really interesting point. I'm gonna be on the lookout for that now that you said that. I bet that it pops up all over the place, and I just hadn't really noticed that much.
It'd be interesting to go back and read them again and go, oh, yep, I see the moment that was dangled in front of us and no one had any idea. Yep.
Gotta go back and read everything again. Oh, well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, these chapters were pretty good. Yeah, like the moment where we just vindicated that Moonlight was shy. We're just like, oh yes, like we've been calling that since pretty much since she showed up, I think.
Yep.
So that was nice to be vindicated. Yeah, I liked the when she transforms into an Elantri and starts like throwing out references to all the Elantrian stuff, like from the Rose Empire or someone from Viking Pope. I'm like, oh yes, cool, all right, he's still kicking. So maybe if we ever get that sequel to Elantris that he's talked about, like we can see more of what's going on there. I really liked just Wax at the end of the truck chase, just saying to Wayne's like, do you want to get a drink? Like it just gave me the sense like, wow, there really is like just finality to this. Like this is gonna like at least one of these two, it's gonna be the last time we see them. Whether one dies and one travels the Cosmere or both die or something. It's like, but one of these two definitely isn't coming out of this one. And I know we've been like say it's very clearly setting up for Wayne to die, but I feel like maybe that's the misdirect that Brandon's pulling on us this time. Maybe it's gonna be Wax. And Wayne does go off through the Cosmere, so we'll see where that all goes. But just that moment where he just stops and recognizes that we just need to take a breather for a minute. Like the world is about to end, and realistically we don't have too much of a chance of stopping that. We will try, but maybe we just need to just regather, refresh, and go into it. Just a bit easier. And I thought that was just a really unexpected moment for me, and I really appreciated it. And yeah, like the underground settlement of all the women who had been kidnapped and everything else. I was like, I don't know what I expected. It wasn't this. It is a cool idea. Gave me very cult vibes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Entrone's got some Kool-Aid prepped for you people or something. Just really, really uncomfortable vibes throughout that whole thing. I don't want to say Stepford Wives, but I'm struggling to think of like another one of those like brainwash community sort of projects. That it just like I had visions of all of them coming into my head as I read that bit, and like we always hated like Edwan and Entrone, but it's like, oh, so you guys are actually cult leaders as well. Ugh.
That's true. I mean, we don't have any indication that like Edwarn had the same position here as Entrone does, where it's like, oh, I'm going to be the mayor of this city also, and everyone will know about me. But
no, the way the people talk just seemed to indicate Edwan wasn't a big figure in their lives, but he was the mastermind behind it all. Like Entrone specifically referred to as Edwan's community project. So,
yep.
But I mean, that was Edwan's thing. He always operated best from the shadows, whereas Entrone's just like everyone will worship me as their leader.
That does seem more, yeah. You're not wrong. He likes the attention, clearly.
Yeah, brat. Can't wait for him to get his.
I mean, Telson seems to take after her uncle to an extent because she's seems to be more behind the scenes on stuff.
Yeah.
But I like we've been saying for most of the book that there's hints here that like this is going to be the end for Wayne, and it makes me think it's so strong that it makes me think it must be a misdirect, right? Like it's going to be Wax instead. But I don't want Wax to die with like his two small children, and like that'll be so much more heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I am mentally prepared for Wayne to die. As much as I would hate it, I am prepared for that. If they took Wax, I just don't think I'll cope with that.
So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. But yeah, I when I got to this point, I was thinking the same thing as you. It's like it really seems like they're setting this up for an ending, and Wayne may not make it, maybe both of them. But what if it's Wax instead?
Yeah, I mean, like the last time we got to the end of the original trilogy, we got to the end. It's like, well, both the main characters wound up dying. So who knows? Maybe Wax and Wayne could both go. And but I mean, like I am confident Steris is going to come out of this alive. So even if Wax dies, the kids will still have a great parent.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, Steris isn't. I guess she's in the middle of the city that might get it blown up, so we can't say she's not in as much danger, but it's a different sort of danger, I guess.
Steris is going to find some way to unfuck this whole situation. You watch it.
That's her official title, Steris the Unfucker.
Steris saves the day. Not calling it.
We joke that that's my title at work.
That was good. That was my nickname in high school, actually, the Unfucker.
Oh, gosh. Okay, I guess let's get into these chapters. So we ended last time with Mariside being like, we need to save these people who are gonna get murdered, and Moonlight being like, I mean, come on, do we have to? Like, we got more important shit to be about. But so she's got them. She's like, we're doing this thing. And so they make a quick plan. They're gonna go in. She's gonna catch some people in the cube. They're gonna take them out. They need to do it quietly though. And then she accidentally catches Twin Soul in the cube also, and not like at least one of the guys she was trying to catch. And so she's like, oh, sorry about that, dude. And then there's a fight. I mean, it's not as interesting an action-y fight as we've gotten several times so far, because it's more personal. Nobody's really superpowering much here. But it's a quick, brutal sort of little fight, and it ends with her having to save Moonlight by shooting a guy with the rifle, which is bad because it alerts everyone else down here that something is up. And we find out that the people they were saving are not the missing women, as Jamie had theorized last time. And it made a little bit of stir in the Discord where people were like, wait a second. Like, when she said that, I was confused. Like, did I not remember what section of the book we're in? Because they don't find the women yet. Which I had the same thought, actually, when we were recording that last one. And Jamie's like, and here's those women. And I was like, wait, what? Really? But that's just because I knew where we were going, and no, you guys did not.
Yeah, and then I started reading these chapters, and I went, "That's not the women." How many people have these people kidnapped?
Apparently, lots.
Yeah. Well, to be fair,
really
these people were Gabe's people, because he was like, I don't like what you're saying about me.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are his political prisoners.
Yeah.
It makes sense now, but when you have to stop at certain points in the book because you're not allowed to continue reading, you make assumptions.
Yeah.
The whole point behind the predicament section.
Yep, exactly.
That wasn't even a predicament, though. That was, oh my god, we found them. Everyone's gone, no, you haven't.
Wait, what?
Not yet.
You're almost there, but not quite.
She read too many
If
chapters.
you ever needed proof that I haven't read ahead, that's what it is.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there you go. Definitely did not read ahead on that one.
Oh goodness. So yeah, they also find a book that the evidence that got destroyed, and Moonlight's just like, I can rewind that later. It's fine. Which, geez, I didn't even think about when she said that she had a stamp that could fix something. It didn't even occur to me, like that kind of usefulness where it's like, they've just destroyed evidence. Don't worry, rewind.
That is the unfucking stamp.
It is, exactly. There you go. It's just it's such a versatile word.
Yeah.
And then there's some mention of Shadesmar, the dimension overlapping ours. That's how Twin Soul and I got here. And they're like, I mean, Twin Soul says she has access to some very specialized troops, hard to control, dangerous to unleash. And I know their destructive power personally. But the local perpendicularity is far to the south and carefully controlled. So I wonder if that means, is it the Ghost Bloods controlling it? Or is it, the Southern Scadrians? Do they have charge of this thing? Or, what's the deal there?
Is that what Kelsey was doing in the south, looking for it?
Or maybe he's just visiting their base there or something. Yeah.
Well, my guess would be that's how he originally got to the south, was maybe through that perpendicularity. And that's how he got, to those people in the first place.
Interesting possibility. Yeah.
He's like, all right, I'm going to take this perpendicularity. Scadrial pops out. This isn't where I parked my car.
But so she's like, so they can't get them here, right? And then that's like, autonomy has created such portals unexpectedly and against all understood mechanics on some planets. So maybe. And then we find out that we got a guy who's an advisor to the Senate, the head of the opposition party for the Bilming Council. He's like, I think I still am. Who knows how long he's been in here. We got the editor of that newspaper, who we established in the broadsheet was missing after having opposed the mayor. Yeah, so she's here. That's good. And she's like, look, they have some sort of army. I've been taking notes. I love that. This is a reporter here. Newspaper woman to the core, who's hiding in the back of the cage waiting to be murdered and taking notes on it.
Who gave her a notepad?
Right? Maybe they're just like, yeah, you can keep your notepad. Who cares?
she's like, I had to carve them in my arm, but I got them.
She's like, here, take my notes. They're on your arm. Get me an axe.
And so she says, locate a place called the Community. I think that's where their barracks are. So the community, word about it has been spreading, but we still don't know exactly what it is at this point. And they try to get these people out of here, and here come 24 guards. Soldiers, really. And so things have gone sideways to a severe degree. And I don't know what you guys thought was going to happen here, but like Twin Soul turning into a big magical mech was not where my mind went.
Yeah. Well, anything's possible, I guess.
And it was so cool.
So yeah, he's just like, okay, so I'm going to need a jar of that investiture.
Yep. And then he's like, it's morphin' time.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it reminds me of like I think the monks in D&D can do a thing like this where they create like spiritual like hands and eventually like a whole body or something.
Sort of reminded me of, I think there's a bit in Last Airbender where Aang and Toph are training earthbending against each other, and they both like encase themselves in the earth and have like a visor so they can see out.
Yep.
Didn't really make sense for Toph because she's blind anyway, but
yeah, she doesn't need a visor.
But like that's the sort of image I had in my head. He's just got this crystal body around himself and just like walks up the corridor, and I was like, yep, all right, that's pretty sick.
And like Twin Soul says he's going to take care of it, and Maris like, what? No, I can't let you do that. Like they're going to kill you. And he's like, I think you're underestimating Silajana and her description, because she has no idea what's going on, and we're in her head. So she's just like, so it was like a big transparent rock surrounded him, and then like more rocks started popping up. And from the boulders, there were some smaller boulders, only longer. And eventually she's like, wait, those are like arms and legs. And oh my gosh. And he ends up a 12-foot tall stone behemoth. And then he has a very dramatic monologue bit, which I loved, where he's just like, behold. And a whole long speech about who he is. And he's basically like, so Silajana says, I have to warn you. You have been given this rebirth to bless, encourage, and uplift those around you. You've wasted that gift. Lay down your weapons and let us pass or suffer my wrath. It appears that my offer has been rejected after they start shooting him. In turn, your offer of conflict is accepted. Prepare yourselves. It's great. I love this guy.
Just the best moment. Like, well, I tried. Now I'm gonna fuck you up.
Yep. You can't say he didn't give him a chance.
Oh yeah, he went on for some time. Like I'm sure they had to reload at some point in that spiel.
Right. It's so, yeah, it's Moonlight's like, okay, we're going to go the other way. He'll get the people out. It's fine. Like he stands the best chance of anyone at getting these people out of here. So, and fortunately there are signs down here when it's like, hey, community this way. So, all right, that makes it much easier. And so they're trying to sneak to whatever the community is. And she hears or senses something following them. And this chapter ends with her being like, hopefully we'll stay ahead of it, whatever it is. Which even by the end of this section, we don't get like a great idea of exactly what it is. I mean, we get a description and an idea of like where it came from basically, but I want to know more. I guess we saw some like hemalurgic monstery things in Shadows of Self, like underground fighting Wax and Tensoon, and we never got much information about them either.
And that I think she references that. She says, well, Wax told me about blah, blah, blah. So I think that she does reference that she thinks it's a creature of similar nature.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't know what you don't know either, and it could be yes, it could be hemalurgic, but it could be, anything from anywhere through any perpendicularity.
It's true. I think she says something about spikes in the shoulders, which definitely hint that that's what it is. But we'll get there, I guess. We cut to Wax and Wayne, who have gotten to the end of the underground, the sewer tunnel or whatever that they were in. And Wayne is trying to store health, but, it's kind of pointless at this point. And they find a building where the lab presumably was, that Entrone had all those notes about visiting the lab. And it's a warehouse, I guess. And there's guys start shooting at them. And he's like, oh, no aluminum weapons. This is good. They didn't have time to prepare for our arrival here. And out of the warehouse come a bunch of trucks, 3 that he sees. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go in the air and start chasing down these trucks. Try to find which one is carrying the evidence that we need or whatever. Or the bomb, potentially. That's the big thing. It's like maybe the bomb is here. And after taking out a truck or 2, he starts thinking, wait a second. These trucks are all acting really obvious. It's too easy to follow them. And that's when he spots like the 4th truck that is the like secret hidden truck. So these are all decoys. And these guys have aluminum weapons, so that's less good. And this, I really like this whole scene. Like, this is a cool Wax using Allomancy scene.
He makes a point saying, like, I haven't done this in so long, and in Ellendale I kept holding myself back for, property damage purposes and stuff like that, and this is him just like, yep, fuck all that, I'm cutting loose.
It really makes you think, like, wait, that was you holding yourself back from property damage? Jeez, okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, in the end, he stops the vehicle just by, like, plopping down in front of it, basically, and making himself weigh a ridiculous amount and then pushing on it to, like, stop it dead in its tracks. It makes me think of that scene in The Dark Knight where he, like, gets the truck and makes it flip or whatever.
Yeah. It's a cool moment, but again, he drains his reserve here, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you draining yourself before the final fight? Like, this is not good.
Weight, at least, is, I feel like, easier to store up than health. But I agree, he's draining a lot of weight here.
Yeah, that's true. That's one of the cool things I think about Wax's power is, like, he stores stuff while he, like, even storing is useful for him.
Yep. That's the real thing about this is, like, back in the day with Sazed, he was like, when I think we first see it in the second book when he and Marsh go to the Conventicle of Saran, and he can get down to the ground by just storing up a bunch of weight, so he's super light and he kind of floats to the ground. And he even thinks, like, that there's really not any use for, like, making yourself weigh more. He only ever uses it to make himself weigh less. And I think that probably changes. I think we see him use it to make himself weigh more, like in the big fight at the Siege of Luthadel, where he's punching all the Koloss and stuff. But from his perspective, there's not much use for being heavier. And here, Wax often uses being heavier because it goes so well with his pushing ability. But yeah, he just goes around all the time at, like, he tells us in the first book, at like half weight or something, and just is storing weight all the time. But it gets hard to walk if he tries to store more than that or something. Is that what I remember him saying? And when he stops the truck and it crumples, like a tire flies off and through the window of a liquor store, and he's like, oh man, Wayne wouldn't like that. And at the end of this chapter is when he's like, you know what? I hadn't done this in a long time, and I loved doing this sort of thing, but I can go flying around the city anytime I want, and I can bring Max with me, and it's just as good. I don't need this. I don't need this kind of thing anymore. Which, once again, we get some great show of how, like, Wax has evolved, basically. Kids can do that to you. Make you not need to destroy trucks anymore. I haven't destroyed a single truck since I had kids, so there you go.
Did you destroy any trucks before you had kids?
It's not relevant.
Okay.
The side of him you haven't heard of.
But in chapter 53, Marasi and Moonlight are being hunted by something not quite human. This is what we were just talking about. And so I'm trying to... It takes a while here where they're, like, creeping and hiding, and it's like, I know there's something there, but I don't know what it is. And then all of a sudden, Gay Ventrone comes over the speakers and is like, everyone stay calm. I am in the community making preparations for our new arrivals. This is what we've prepared for. Okay, here it is. So she watched as something comes into the cavern where they are. It stood on 4 elongated legs and had an unnervingly long neck, with a head that was not entirely canine. It had features that, even shadowed, evoked an image that was too human. A dog's nose or something approximating it, but human eyes set forward in its skull, which, that is, yes, very disturbing. No clothing, no fur, but 2 spike heads jutting from the shoulders.
Yeah, sounds great. Sounds like my favorite thing.
People say spikes, but who knows?
Yeah, who knows? This is exactly the
spiky people dogs.
It reminds me to the description of the elongated legs and, like, the long neck reminds me of something from a Final Fantasy game, but I can't quite place what. I'm gonna try googling this now.
Trying to think which one that would be. Doesn't ring a bell for me.
It's got, like, spiky legs also, like point legs that end in points, and
the image that pops into my head for these things.
Are you thinking of Quetzalcoatl? No, that doesn't have spiky legs.
No.
What were you saying, Dak?
Basically, like, trying to picture these things, I sort of picture, like, the werewolf from Prisoner of Azkaban with human eyes.
Interesting.
Those really gangly legs that it had, a snout.
Yeah, the thing with the dog nose and the eyes, that I can definitely see how that would by itself conjure that image. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I like yours better. Let's see. Okay, yeah, and she mentions like Wax had encountered something like this. And so she says that she recognizes it as a hemalurgic monstrosity. The Khandra and the Koloss had risen from the Lord Ruler's attempts at using hemalurgy to create something new. And she's like, I guess the set is also messing with that stuff. They had found a permutation that was viable, but grotesque.
I don't want to know about what some of their failed experiments were if this was a successful one.
Right? Yeah, like, there's just too much that, yeah, no, I don't want to know. But this cavern is divided by a wooden wall, and Moonlight's like, here, let me make a door. We'll pop through and avoid whatever this thing is. And so it says that they slipped into a dim room built up against the wooden wall that bisected the chamber. 2 windows looked through it. And so inside, she sees a town. Neat rows of houses, lit with floodlights from above. Someone had painted imitation flowers and grass on the floor. And she's like, oh, I guess this is the community. Whatever. It's weird, but okay. Why would it? And Moonlight's like, this is weird. Like, I think this is one-way glass. What is this place? And Maris is like, we could try to escape into there and find out. And Moonlight says, no, those twisted things will follow us. The strain the set has developed can track like a hound, but think almost like a person. So I guess she's run into these before, or she knows about them at least, which just adds to the creepiness that she's with what she describes here. And Marisai says, can we fight them? And Moonlight's like, well, I'm not natively a soldier. I can defend myself if I have to, but she needs one of those stamps that we saw before, like the one that turned her into a warrior, because we find out here in a minute that this is pretty much for certain. This is Shy, that who we know from before. But I guess maybe those don't work on other planets if she has to adjust the magic to work on other, I don't know.
Yeah, it sounds like she's only been able to make these 3 stamps so far for traversing the worlds. At least that's the way she made it sound earlier.
And so she's saying, I have the one stamp that can change me. And Maris is like, can that person fight? And was like, I mean, better than fight. But she's not me. I've always wanted to try this specific transformation, but it's dangerous. It won't wear off like the others. It will be permanent until I decide not to maintain it, which actually is a giant leap forward, because with her old ones, she had to restamp herself every week or something, or every day, I forget, to keep the change. So the fact that she can make one that's permanent at all, I feel like is a big thing. And maybe it's something about like being an Elantrian and having like this magical power flowing through you that keeps it stable. I don't know, but I like Marisai's like, okay, so you're saying transforming yourself into another person, that's not magic. And Moonlight's like, okay, I mean, that's kind of magical, I'll admit. You have to understand the door. It all makes sense. And I admit that this whole section, when I read it, I had no idea what she was talking about. I had not even a guess about what this stamp might do. Until she starts saying, it's like, this will make my soul think my parents moved to a different kingdom on my home world, and that I was born and raised there. And that's when I was like, wait a second.
Because I was, even after that, I wasn't sure where she was going with it. I was like, well, that could be, Dakor. Like, we don't know.
That's true. But that's where I was just like, the Sheod can only take you if you're from Erelon or Duladel, which they're related to the Erelon people, or Teod, I guess. But anyway, so I was like, now I get where we're going, and I am shocked. Shocked, I say.
Yeah.
And she's like, you're going to have to re-explain to me why I need to fight those soldiers. Also, here's some information. Give this to me and show me this map. And so it says, unlike Twin Soul, who had tapped the pure investiture like a keg, Moonlight just took it all in one metaphoric slurp.
Chug, chug, chug. Chug that godly liquid.
She stamps herself, and her hair shrinks to a bob and becomes luminous, but her skin shines even brighter than that. And so once everything stabilizes, she is. My thing is, we never met an Elantrian, who was this pompous. But maybe that's because we didn't know really any old school Elantrians when we were in Elantris, because they were all, like in horrible pain.
That was that angry, bitter old one in Secret History who was just like, you don't need God, you got me.
That's true. We did meet several. Yeah.
But also how much of it is what personality she can write in. Like if she hasn't necessarily, we don't know, if she's met an Elantrian or anything like that before. It's like this persona that she's written for herself. It's like, I assume if I was godlike, this is what I'd be like.
That's a really good thought. I just assumed that if she knew enough to make a stamp that she like had gotten to know Elantrians and Elantrian power better. But that's an excellent point, that just might be what she thinks they would be like.
Maybe she's taken the personality off of like Kelsier has met Elantrians and has described them to her. And like that is 100% how Kelsier would describe someone with the godlike powers.
Probably.
I don't know. I always got the sense in the Elantris book that when they talked about the Elantrians of the past, that a lot of them were kind of pompous because they had godlike powers and people worshipped them. That's kind of the impression that I got. Obviously, the Elantrians during the course of the actual book itself are not that way because their lives are terrible, but that's just kind of the way it appeared to me.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. And most of the people that we met in Elantris that talked about the old Elantrians, it was like there was a very negative feeling overall about them.
Could have been just their attitude.
Yeah. Except for Galadon is the only person who I think we met who actually knew an Elantrian and like talked about them in a very positive way. Or not, he wasn't even that positive. That's because it's Galadon. But like his dad was an Elantrian or whatever. So anyway, she's just like, "Immortal, how are you, child? I seem to be in an unexpected location." And yeah, so she's drawn. She looks at the map that Marasai's showing her, and she like draws a thing on the ground, a sketch of the basin, but with a strange rune at the center, and that stabilizes like the light, the power in her somehow. And so Marasai explains like, "Hey, you're in Bilming in the Elendel Basin. You just drew a map of it on the ground." And Moonlight's like, "So I did. How curious." So I feel like Elantrian magic has always been based on the location, and we know that like the map of Erelon was drawn into all of the Aeons. Like that's why it stopped working, because the map changed with the addition of the big chasm or whatever. So I assume that drawing a symbol on the ground with like the Elendel Basin drawn in there is like a way to direct the door power to this location and make it flow through here like it does other places. I don't know that for certain, but that's the only reason I can think of that she would do that and it would have the effect that it does. And she's like, "Did you have a boon to request of me, child? Something I can do for you?" She's like, "Well, there's soldiers outside who want us dead." And I'm just like, "Oh, bother. Who are they? Nasties from the Rose Empire, or another group of Wyrn's faithful come to waste their time trying to fight their betters?" She's so pompous, but I love it. It's great.
Yeah, take that, Viking Pope.
Suck it. She smiled through two perfect lips, blessed from within by her natural brilliance. Just even Marasai's description of her is just so whatever. Anyway, Marasai's like, "No, I mean, they're just bad people. We had a plan. You and I, before you changed. I have always been Shai, blessed of the Sheod." And the Shai thing just makes me think, because all the pronunciation of names in Elantris were weird, and it was partly because they're all based on Aeons. It's like a pair of Aeons, and so you say kind of both of the Aeon sounds, which is why when we read like Kiin as Keen, it's actually like pronounced Kai-ein. And somebody pointed out in the Discord the other day that the girl who shows up in this book, Keen's daughter, who we called Casey, it's written Kaice. Apparently the pronunciation is actually K-ice, which is weird, and I refuse to say that.
I see how they got there, but it's like it's very hard to discern that from reading it.
Yeah.
Unless you have like, the Aeon dictionary of pronunciations.
Exactly. But yeah, I guess this is what Shai's name would be like if it was based on Aeons instead of her coming from the Rose Empire. It's like Shai.
Yeah.
And so Marasai's like, "Okay, whatever. I'll just have to play into this." It's like, "Oh, blessed one, your power is incredible and your being divine. Please, will you grant me a boon?" "Why, of course, so polite. A rare quality in mortals." And so she gives her the directional information that Moonlight gave her to start with. Like, "Here, give me this information," to show her where to go with her disappearing Aeon and how far to go. And so then Shai uses magic that we've seen before to create like a fake image of Marasai to go with her so that they won't hunt Marasai after they see her. So she's like, "Yeah, I'll take fake Marasai. We'll appear to them. We'll disappear off in that direction, and they'll follow us, and you'll be fine." And while Marasai is watching this, Moonlight's like, "Wait, are you still here? Scoot along, scoot along." I want to know what happens after this scene where does Shai end up and what does Shai end up doing when she's end up like on the streets of Bilming strolling around like, oh, what's going on here?
I got the impression it's like the coordinates that she was given will basically pop her back out in Kelsey's little safe house, and maybe Casey will just be like, okay, we're doing this now. All right, I know what to do. I've got a the backup stamp here.
Maybe. Yeah, that would be a good plan. To have pre-prepared a way to bring herself back, because it doesn't seem like Shai is going to be interested in changing back.
No.
But maybe Kelthia could bring her back.
Hopefully.
If she's going to the hideout, if that's where she had to get to.
Yeah. And she's like, be certain to deliver the proper offerings for the blessing I've magnanimously gifted you, and be pious in your treatment of your gods. Marissa's like, yep, pious. That's what I'm going to be.
Yeah, she's like, she's a survivorist, right?
She is, yes.
She's like, I just met my god earlier, so I'm pious.
You actually brought me to him.
That's it. She's just she goes through a new door and is going to check out what's going on in this place. And we cut back to Wax, who finds a bunch of papers and equipment and 3 corpses in the back of the truck. No bomb, though. And then one of the dead guys starts having red glowing eyes. Or actually, it's a woman, and says in a rasping voice, you are good at this. We thought we'd taken enough precautions, yet here you are, breathing down our neck. Such drive, such individualism. A shame that Harmony got you first. I like that there's like some competition for Wax here. Like all the gods are interested in him. Harmony likes him. Autonomy's impressed by him. And I think we're given the impression to some extent that if Harmony hadn't called dibs, Kelsier would also be interested.
It's good to keep your options open.
All these gods being so jealous of each other and their stuff. And then there's Death just doing his thing. Because Marsh is the best.
Oh, gosh. And then so he says Trell, and the thing says, your sister becomes Trell, the name in mythology I prepared for her to adopt, but she's not achieved it yet. So this is Autonomy. This is the big guy, or I guess girl. We established that she's a woman originally, at least. Although I think, well, it doesn't matter. And Autonomy's like, don't worry, I'm not going to interfere here. Your sister does not understand this sort of harmony. She pleads with me to act, but cannot see it is only in the struggle to survive that a people achieves their potential. So apparently Autonomy is all about survival of the fittest.
Yep, proper apocalypse vibes here.
Very much exactly what I was thinking, actually.
Such an underrated bad guy, Apocalypse.
Underrated? People love Apocalypse.
Yeah, well, the fans do, but like most mainstream exposure to him is from that shitty movie.
Oh, that's a good point. Which, also, Psylocke got not great show from that movie either. So,
yep.
Yeah. X-Men movie's bad.
And Wax is just like, okay, so where's the bomb? And she's like, it's not the bomb you should worry about. It's the destruction I have sent if the bomb fails. And Wax is like, I think you're bluffing. And she's like, I don't think whatever you want. I don't care. You yourself know the strength, the capacity one has in the moments before death. When the soul is pushed to its limit, that's when true exceptionalism manifests. Which, I mean, Wax did get those powers just as he was about to die, and that was probably the most powerful he's ever been, but I don't think you can say it was because he was about to die. Like, Marisai brought him the Bands of Mourning.
Sure. Yeah, this type of thinking appears in fiction a lot, I feel like. For example, I was reading Dragon Ball Super today, and Vegeta transformed into a new type of guy because he was like getting hurt, and so it like triggered him to transform into something he's never transformed into before. So it's like, it's a thing. It's like when facing death, you find ways to overcome it, or it's even manifested in real life, like adrenaline spikes.
Yeah.
In times of
for
duress.
Saiyans, it's kind of more literal though, because when Saiyans get beaten almost to death and they recover, they are stronger. So
sure.
And I love Wax. Like he's very business here. He's like talking to a god, and he's just like, okay, where's the bomb? And then when she doesn't want to answer that, he's like, okay, and what do we have to do to get you to leave us the hell alone? And she smiles, prove you deserve it. And then she's gone.
And it just made me think, as so many things do. A Futurama. Bender's just looking at the balls, just going, get the hell off my planet.
I was actually impressed by how reasonable Autonomy seems here compared to what we've heard about her.
Well, I guess it sort of makes sense in like from what we know of her her whole shtick is encouraging people to grow and think and improve. And if her philosophy is like, you do that best when you're faced with certain death, it sort of makes sense that, all right, if when faced with certain death, these people throw me back, like, I have to respect that, because she does respect it when people foil her plans if in foiling it they are ambitious enough. So I totally see it as like, yeah, look, if you can throw me back, I'll let you have the planet. Like that, you do you, man.
Yeah. At the same time, I feel like she's willing to sound reasonable because she's holding all the cards in her head. So
that's fair.
Yeah, that's a good point. She's like, we've got a bomb, and if that doesn't work, I'm sending an army. So, I can be magnanimous here because I'm gonna win either way.
I got some serious shit waiting in the wings there, buddy.
Yep. So, Wax finds a little information. The rockets can travel 30 or 40 miles, and they were testing them on ships. That's why they built the Navy, so they could test the weapons out on the ocean.
And they didn't realize that the weapons they fired awakened an even greater evil, and that is how we get Godzilla. Wouldn't that be just like a real turning point in the book? It's like you get to the end, like you got the armies fighting each other, and then all of a sudden, fucking kaiju.
I don't know, just give Twin Soul some more magic juice, and maybe he can make his thing kaiju size.
Ooh, crystal kaiju, nice.
Yeah. So he shoves some stuff in a duffel bag and is gonna head out. And that's when he sees the guy who owns the liquor store, like, oh no, my window. And he's like, I'm sorry, man, trying to prevent a catastrophe. And then he sees something, and he gives the guy money, to be fair. But he's like, wait a second, is that a case of log shine? And I don't know that we find out what log shine is.
I think it's just a really good whiskey, right?
So
it's a beer.
Yeah, it's a beer.
Oh, beer.
A short time later, he ends up back where he left Wayne. Wayne had dealt with all the enemies in the actual warehouse. And he's even thinking, like, man, restoring health must be really hard on you, especially, like, Wayne is not as young as he used to be. And he holds up some bottles of log shine, a beer brewed in the roughs, is what he says. Best there was. And Wayne's like, where'd you find those? I ain't had a bottle of log shine in years. You really do care about me, don't you?
Tears up.
And, so he says, I think it's time we take a bit of a breather. And Wayne says, can we afford that? And he's like, well, I need to dig through what I found anyway. And if we keep running into fights exhausted, we're going to get ourselves killed. So, we'll chill for half an hour. And Wayne's like, all right, sounds awesome.
But you're going to spend that half hour storing health, so you're still going to feel like shit.
But he's going to get to drink some beer, so,
Yeah, true.
Although apparently when he uses health, it burns away the alcohol feeling. So if you're storing health, you might get drunk real fast.
Which Wayne might be good with that.
That's a good point.
Yep.
It might help in this situation.
Yeah. Can't feel how sick I'm getting if I'm too drunk to pay attention. Okay, so then we go back to Marisi, who's making her way into the Community, the title of an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Wait, no, that's The Village.
Yeah, Community is the place run by Chevy Chase.
It's true.
Only for a few seasons.
She's just walking through. It's like everything seems weirdly normal in here. There's like couples holding hands. There's a guy working on a playground thing in his yard. Children eager for the swings to get connected. A man in white uniform delivering jars of food to each home, humming to himself. It sounds like a milkman to me, but I guess maybe they have a guy who distributes all the food since you're not growing it, or I don't know how this is working exactly. It was all too peaceful, too normal, and there was no metal. So all the metal she has is what she's got. She's got a sack with glowing jars, some ammo, some explosives, bandages, cash, lockpicks. This is a nice backpack they gave her. Or I guess it was Moonlight's backpack. And so she's like, the Lord Mayor said he was going to the Community. He must be in here somewhere. And people start noticing her. And it's like, maybe this is not good. And then a woman comes out, fine gray-blue dress, short overcoat, long skirt, the style that had been popular a decade ago. And she's like, hurry inside. You've been seen by too many, dear. And so we're going to find out that the main woman here is actually her cousin. They call it Steris's cousin because at the time she disappeared, like, I guess it still wasn't known by many people that Marisi was actually Steris's half-sister. And I guess we also don't know, like, which side this woman is a cousin to Steris on, because if it's her mom's side, then she's not a cousin to Marisi. But they're like, they bring her in, and they think that she is a survivor who's wandered into the caves from the outside. the world of Ash.
I think they have to be related, right? Because isn't the lady's maiden name Harms?
Oh, you may be right. That would make sense. But I guess she doesn't know that they're related. It's probably been years since she saw real food. Don't worry, we have plenty here, just like the old days. You remember? Marysa's like, what are you talking about? And so she explains that this place was built to protect them from the disaster, the ash falls returning. You must be so strong to have survived up there. And that's when Marisi gets it. She assumed that the pictures of falling ash, the strange moving image, that it was all part of a plot to threaten the outside world. But no, it was perpetrated against these people. The blonde woman says she's been down here 7 years now. They lived in a smaller caverns originally, and then they were moved here. And when Marisi asks about the no metal, she's like, oh, well, I mean, obviously we don't have metal. The metal mutants can sense it. We only use a little aluminum to make the lights and the speakers for the public address system. So this is a hell of a story that they came up with to stop any of these people from using their powers or discovering even that they have allomantic powers if they didn't know before.
Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable, even with all the extra.
Well, but Marisi figures it's like, oh, so, they let some of these in, and then we're like, oh, these metal mutants can sense the metal. See, they come in and attack us if we have that. So
tell people a lie big enough, and some of them will believe it.
Well, I mean, especially if you're giving them some kind of proof for it, which I guess they've tried to provide. So
yeah.
I guess it's what they've known for years. Can you imagine like this? And I know she mentions this, but when they figure out what actually is going on, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. Especially honestly, my main concern is that we know that most of the people originally taken were women. And so they could have also taken some men that nobody noticed. But my greater concern is that maybe some of the men that these women have been marrying do know what's going on. And that is going to hurt worse.
I think they do. I think she does say at one point that some men were abducted as well. It wasn't just women. It was predominantly women, but it wasn't entirely.
And so they explained that they've been trying to fight Gabe Entrone on like his demands that they can't go out and try to find survivors and bring them here. He says outsiders are too dangerous. Every once in a while, somebody comes in and tells them about how horrible things are outside. And so they've even gotten confirmation from quote unquote survivors coming in randomly, how terrible things are out there. A destroyed land full of terrible metal mutants, one of the women says. So when Mare says like, no, like that's not right at all, everyone's like, oh, she must have ash sickness. And Maris is like, no, I mean, those are actors brought in to prove his lies. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, we understand. One woman says that she had 3 children in Bilming. And she's like, do you know anything about it? Like, are they okay? Did they survive? And so then she explains that there was a random lottery. The scientist who discovered the impending eruptions realized they could only save a few. So there was a lottery that selected people, weighting it towards women of childbearing age, of course, and an emphasis on allomancers or those from allomantic lines. We couldn't bring our families, the man said. We argued for it once we woke up here. But we felt the earth shake, and we knew. So those explosions down here had some other effects that helped. And the woman says that she is a rioter. Armel Harms. Yep, there he goes. Marisi's distant cousin, Armel Harms. So there's a rioter, there's a lurcher, there's a soother. The man had 2 allomancer parents, but doesn't have powers himself. And so that's when Marisi figures out who these people are. She's like, I do know this blonde woman. There was a reason she was familiar. These are the people that Miles kidnapped 7 years ago. So it's been 7 years since the first book at this point, is what we learned here. I thought it had been a little bit longer than that, but
I thought it had, because this is 6 years after Bands of Mourning,
Yeah.
But like I didn't think the first 3 books all happened in the space of a year.
right? I think there were 6 months between, maybe it was Bands and the one before that we know for
Shadows.
sure. Yeah, I don't know that we know how long it was between Shadows and the first one. Alloy of Law. Sorry, it took me a second. So I guess if there was just another 6 months, then it would have been about that long.
I guess. I thought it was like a year between the first 3 each.
Yeah. And I mean, she may just be rounding. So like that, it's about 7 years, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess it's not that super important. For some reason in my brain, it was 10 years since the start. And I feel like maybe that was mentioned somewhere in here. It's like Wayne was like 10 years older than he used to be or something. I don't know. For some reason, I was thinking 10. And so at the beginning of the next chapter, we find out that Marisi and Wax had been searching for these people for years on and off. So at least he can retroactively say that Jamie's concerns were not Wax was thinking about them. They had tried to find these people. They didn't just forget about them since the first book. But
makes me feel better. It's like Brandon didn't know what was going to happen with them. Did anyone care what happened with them, or was it just going to be this eternal mystery? I'm really glad it's not.
Yeah. And I mean, he gets to say it now. It's like, oh, yeah, totally. We were totally looking for them all that time. We just never mentioned it. But I agree. It does make me feel a little bit better about it. And so it's like they've just been locked up in a bunker and convinced that the world had ended. Jeez. The playground the man had been building earlier suddenly took on a darker cast. Yes, these people didn't seem terrified their children would be taken. So the set wants to breed an army of Allomancers. These people have children, but I guess it hasn't been long enough. If it's only been 7 years, then none of these children are old enough to be taken for an army yet. And that Marisi's like, wait, I know you. Armel Harms. And she's like, oh, yeah, I was in Harms before I got married. And so she has to avoid, she's like, I'm Marisi, Steris's cousin. And she's like, Steris, is she? Marisi's like, yeah, she's alive. They're all alive. You've been lied to really terribly. The basin did not fall. And they're like, oh, ash sickness. It's okay. You're disoriented, seeing delusions, dear. And Marisi says, look, I don't even have time to prove this to you guys now. I mean, I'll come back. We'll figure this out. But right now, I've got important stuff I got to be doing. Because, there's an army on its way to destroy us all. So maybe priorities. But she tells Armel, you were taken because they wanted Allomancers and they were willing to play the long game to get them. And she looks up where you can hear the feet of her children. Which, yes, that's a horrifying thing to be told. You have to admit, it's odd that you were kidnapped by a group of armed men during a robbery. It's like, well, they had to do that to avoid mass panic. Posing as a group of thieves? Well, it worked in the words of Founding. The survivor himself pretended to be a thief. Pretended?
Nah, that dude was a thief, bro. I hate to break it to you, but also, is that like a commonly held belief in this time that he pretended to be a thief? Like, I would imagine as the words of Founding would have been pretty clear. It's like, no, he was a thief, but he was also a good man.
Yeah, I wonder if it's one of those things where like the priests are interpreting it a little differently because they don't want to encourage being thieves. So it's one of those things. It's spelled out explicitly, but they're like, well, that's like a metaphor for I don't know. But yeah, that just made me laugh. Where it's like, yeah, the survivor pretended to be a thief. Maybe the story is that he was really pretending all along. Like, through all that thieving, it was all for really just to get to the point to take down the Lord Ruler.
Makes no sense at all.
And so apparently they call their town Wayfarer, which is kind of a cool name for a town. But you hear over the speakers, a dangerous outsider has been spotted slipping in through the tunnels. She's armed and very, very ash sick. So Gave Entrone has heard. Word has made it to him from the people who saw her that Marisi's in town. And Armel's just like, hell, we'll have to hide her. One of the women's like, do you have any weapons? Something we can use to overthrow Entrone? And Armel's like, we're not overthrowing him. Look, we follow our plan. We sneak up to the surface, find survivors, bring them down. Really, I doubt that it'll be easy for them to sneak up to the surface. It's probably very well guarded to prevent them from finding out the truth. But I like her plan. And Marisi's just like, where is the guy? And they're like, he has a big mansion at the end of town. It's dangerous because he needs metals to work his devices. If the mutants ever invade, they'll go for him first. And Marisi's like, yeah, very brave of him, I'm sure. No doubt he has a nice tunnel to the surface, too. It's like, you know about those walls, right? They have one-way glass. They watch you, and they're like, ash sickness. See, that's something that they could prove real fast. It's like, go break that glass over there, and you'll see. And Armel's just like, why would you go to all the trouble of carrying fake credentials, creating a fake stamp for this year's date? And someone's like, yeah, I mean, she must have been really far gone. That's really going far. It's like in the horribly destroyed Ash world above, she like created these credentials for herself.
Yeah, it's definitely not a lot. It doesn't make a lot of sense for them to believe it at that point. It's like she shows them a badge. She's like, oh, she just made that. She's really sick. It's like, wait, what? Why would she do that? Being sick doesn't mean you would make fake credentials. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
And so she says, Marisi wants to fight back, and Armel's like, we don't want violence. Also, we don't even have any weapons. And Marisi says, you are weapons. If only we could get you metals. That's why there's none down here. Right. Okay. And then she sees something in the way that Armel looks at her and the credentials, and she's like, you know, don't you? Or at least you suspect that what I'm saying is true. You've always known something was wrong. And Armel's like, I have a family, children, and a husband that I love. And Mara says, but if Entrone wins, then they're doomed to a life in darkness. And he's planning to take your children from you. We have to find metals so we can fight back. And one's like, what do you want us to do? Lick rocks? Hoping there's some iron in there? Which, that's a callback to Allomancer Jack, I feel like, when he, like, licks the cave walls and finds tin.
It worked in the story I read.
I don't think this is working, guys. I've been licking a rock for like an hour, and all I have is a headache.
Like, Entrone comes into the cave and says, all right, security, how are things going? It's like, sir, they're all lined up against the far wall, licking the rocks. What?
Wait, what? Oh, those bastards are trying to pull an Allomancer Jack. Quick, get them!
It's called an Allomancer Jack when you lick a rock for metal. Oh gosh. Mara says, like, idiot people. No, they're just scared. I'll have to rescue them. This is my job. She's like, okay, just take me to Entrone. I'll handle him. And she lifts her rucksack and freezes as she hears it clink. And that's the end of our section. So, predicaments. Let's do what's coming next. We're 73% of the way through this book, which means we're in prime, like, Sanderlanche get going territory here.
Yeah, we really are. And I feel like we get to this point in the book and I'm like, I have no idea what's going to happen. I would like to see that they manage to get some medals in these guys and, you know, they can actually fight back. I think immediately, I think Wax and Wayne are probably going to get into some kind of battle pretty quickly now that they've had their little pit stop, rest stop, possibly goodbye to each other moment, which is very sad. I still hope we flash back to Steris pretty soon. We didn't get any of her viewpoint this week.
We didn't. 8 chapters without her. That seems like a long time.
Yeah, so it'd be interesting to see where we pick things up with her. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we're gonna get through this. I think it's interesting that we were able to speak to autonomy, or Wax was able to speak to autonomy. Keeping a close eye on things. Where Shy pops out, you know, I think we still need to see Kelsier in person. So I think Jack's onto something there. If she can appear back in the hideout, Kelsier's there and can come in and help save the day. You know, maybe as much as I want Wax to be our Mistborn, maybe Kelsier is our Mistborn in the book, in the series. I don't know. We'll see how we go there. But I don't really have a lot. There's so many ways it could go at this point. I don't know where I want or think it should go.
You know, that's a good point that I don't know that we talked about before. Was we were talking about the series is called Mistborn. There's got to be a Mistborn, and we saw Kelsier. We talked to Kelsier. He's a Mistborn.
Yeah, I want to see a Mistborn in action though. I think that's but I think now that we've actually spoken to Kelsier and we know he's around, I really would like him to still show up in the book somewhere. That would be good.
Yeah, if all we got was like talking to him on the phone, basically, that would be a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah.
Is he still a Mistborn? Did he lose his powers when he died?
Well, he didn't have his powers in Ghost World. We know that. We do not know what powers, if any, he has since returning to, like, you know, getting spiked into a mortal body or whatever. I mean, presumably he has ferrochemical powers because we saw that memory that was from his perspective. That Wax saw at the end of the last book, which I don't know how you would get that if you weren't in Kelsier's head and, like, saving a memory from Kelsier's head, right? Like, where else could that come from?
Is that what the spike was for, to give him specifically the Coppermine power, and he brought back his Allomantic ones, or?
But he supposedly made the Bands of Mourning, and the Bands of Mourning had all the powers, so...
True. Confusing.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many avenues to consider.
Yeah.
It's stressful.
Well, we're only 4 episodes from the end of the book, so you know.
Oh my God!
You won't have to be stressed for very long. And honestly, in a way, we're gonna hit the end of the book in 3 episodes because 1 episode is all epilogues.
Oh wow!
Because there's 7 epilogues in this book. So,
whoa!
Oh my gosh!
Well, there you
go.
go.
And we're doing 2 episodes next weekend.
Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, so that would be a mean place to leave it for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not true because you'll get to read everything but the epilogue. So no, that'll
Except
actually
the
be
epilogues,
yeah. That won't be so bad.
We'll be all right. Huh. Well, you know, I'm going to stick with my predicament Wayne is going to either perish or fake his death, one or the other. I've been kind of hoeing that row, or whatever the expression is, since near the beginning of the book. So, and I don't know. I think I talked about this last time. Like, I don't know if we're going to see this army or not. It seems kind of anticlimactic if we don't, but also how much could we really get into with the army of Red and Gold without them all of a sudden being made moot in some way? So I'm trying to figure out like how that would happen. Even if you have this giant group of people who have allomancy in the community, how do they stop an army? Or whose job is it to stop the army, at that point? So like, I don't know. I'm very, very concerned about how that's going to play out. If the third book in the original Mistborn era is any indication, there was a lot of death in that book. So there could be a lot of death in this book. I don't know. That's all still really up in the air, because the stakes are obviously very high, but you don't have the constant sight. Like, everybody is not aware that the world is coming to an end, unlike in the last end of the Mistborn era 1, where it's like everybody was like, oh yeah, no, our planet is like ashes everywhere.
Yeah,
lava.
It was pretty obvious there.
It's pretty obvious bad stuff's going on, and we're all gonna die. So there's so many people unaware of the stakes at this point that it's unclear to me kind of what could really happen. And does everybody continue to stay unaware at the end of the book? Do we save the world and like very few people knew that there was even a risk that the world was going to end? And so I'm just curious as to where we're going to land on that, which way Brandon's going to take it. I really don't know. But I will say that I think Wayne will, like I said, either die or fake his death. I think Wax will survive. And maybe Marasai will go with the Ghost Hunters, or whatever they're called. Ghost Bloods, Ghost Hunters. Kelsier could show up.
Ghostbusters.
I hope Kelsier does show up, but I hope he doesn't. I hope Kelsier shows up and like he's not needed. You know what I mean? Like, he just shows up and he's like, oh, you guys took care of it. Good job. I think that would almost be more fitting, because it's like you're passing the torch. It's like, no, they got this. Which, I mean, his people specifically are protecting Scadrial, the planet, so I guess he's not leaving it up to them. So that's probably not the way it's going to go, because he's like, no, this is my job. I protect this planet. But whatever, we'll see, I guess. Also, for a guy who leads the protectors of Scadrial, he seems extremely uninformed about what's going on. So that's unfortunate. And so that's kind of where I'm landing. I mean, there's still a lot of unknowns, so I don't really have a way to form any predicaments outside of the ones that I've already made. So
okay. Well, that's fair. Yeah, you've been on something's gonna happen to Wayne for a good while. Yeah, I think you were the first one to predict that. So good to know you're sticking to your guns there. When it turns out to be Wax, you're gonna be very disappointed.
That would be a bummer, man.
I like that it won't be Wax dying that makes you sad. It'll be the fact that you misguessed who was going to die.
No, I mean, when I said
Rocket died.
When I said it would be a bummer, I did mean like it would be a bummer that Wax died, not that I was wrong. I don't really care about that.
Okay, so I've got 2, and I took extra care this week to make sure it was actually about the main characters, since I've just spent so many weeks not focusing on them in predicaments at all. So I keep thinking about how Entrone and the set and Ed 1 would try and do this whole, history has repeated with, the ash falling and everything, and now Marasai's found the community who they brainwashed into believing that. And I thought, it'd be fun if these guys were part of a different part of history repeating itself. So I think after she exposes Entrone's lies and the community just tears him apart, they decide to follow her. And so then she just arrives at the final battle with an army of unexpected Allomancers, just like in Hero of Ages. I thought that would be fucking hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was just a fun little one. My big prediction this week, there was a moment when Wax was flying around chasing the trucks, and he thinks about how he doesn't need this anymore. He doesn't need this to feel fulfilled, and it's meant to be a nice heartwarming thing showing how much he's grown. And he mentions like, I can just go like for happy flights through the air, and I can bring Max with me and everything. And I just thought, man, Max was like everywhere in the opening chapters, and we were all predicting he was going to play a big part, and we've barely seen him since, because they sent him out of the city and evacuated him, which makes sense. But I thought, I really feel like that for so much focus, he's really just dropped off the radar. And now I'm thinking to myself, maybe that's intentional, and Max is coming back. I actually think that. So last time I sort of predicted that Admiral Dahl is actually secretly an autonomy agent himself, and we know now that the perpendicularity for the planet is down in the south. I think Dahl might actually have control of it, and he's there waiting to allow the army through with the agreement that, like, the army spares the Malwish, and then, or at least, the Malwish that he wants to survive, and he gets to direct the army from there to attack all of his enemies, and that's what he needs the bands for or something. He's like, look, I've got the weapon of the gods. That means I'm worthy to control this army. And I feel like his insurance policy is on his way back down south. He's kidnapped Max and is taking him to the front line as sort of just, when if and when Wax solves the problems going on up north and he comes down to try and stop the army from coming through, Dahl has Max with him, like to just try and tell Wax to back off. And then further building on that, after Wax's little conversation with Autonomy here, and Autonomy's talking about, when you're faced with death, that is when your true powers, like your true potential, comes through. And it's like, well, he's not being faced with his own death; he might be being faced with the death of his son, and that's when he achieves his full potential and he goes Mistborn, like we've been hoping for throughout this entire book. So yeah, I just think Max has to play a part later in the book because of how much focus he got early on. And I think Dahl might be the key to that. And then it ties into, Wax going Mistborn like we were hoping.
Interesting. I like the part about Wax, having being so scared for his child or whatever that he goes Super Saiyan and takes out the bad guys, and it's awesome. I don't like the part where they kidnap Max. I don't approve.
I mean, I don't like it, but there are plenty of things that happen in fiction, in stories, and I was like, well, I don't like that, but it's a thing that happened. Like, if things that happened in books that you didn't like didn't happen, then books just wouldn't exist. There'd be no story.
No,
that's true.
Well, didn't you know, Dak, that's how people are now? It's like if the story doesn't go the way they want it, they're like, well, cancel that story. It's not good.
Yep. Only happy stories that go the way I want. That's what I'm signing up for.
I mean, I'm all down for a story where things go pleasantly. Like, I think someone said, I want to write a fantasy story where Sean Bean has a really nice day. There was just a picture of Ned Stark holding a kitten and eating an ice cream, going, yes, this has been quite pleasant. but it's like, that'd be a nice story. It probably wouldn't be a very compelling one.
No. Which ice cream should I order? Who knows? It's an episode of Bluey. And
the conflict.
Yeah. Oh man, like I would. Okay, I take it back. I genuinely would like to just watch an episode of Sean Bean sitting on the couch watching Bluey for half an hour.
He's like, I don't understand this show, but I like it.
And people say my accent's hard to understand. What's a bin chicken?
Oh gosh. Okay. We would have, so if your theory is right, he kidnapped Wax's kid. Who knows how he found him, because he'd already, Sarah had already sent them out of town. But he's a resourceful admiral guy, right? He can find him.
Yeah.
He kidnaps the kid, takes him to the south. That means that we're gonna have to go a long way from where we currently are in the next 3 episodes to finish this book out. But it is the Sanderlanche, and those things have been known to happen.
I mean, it's kind of like in True Lies. Spoilers if you haven't seen True Lies, but you should. It's, he gets to the end, he saves his wife, the nuclear bombs have been, well, most of them have been found and everything. They think, all right, that's it, everything's saved. And then someone says, the bad guy kidnapped your daughter. He's like, shit.
I'd totally forgotten that does happen in True Lies, which is, it's one of those things where you're like, the movie's over. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Happens in Bad Boys too, except not with their kid. It's like, yay, movie's over. Nope, your sister got kidnapped. Damn it. Now we have to go to Cuba. Okay. So yeah, this is compelling. If Jamie is right and Wax is going to turn out to be a Mistborn, it feels like we would need that kind of dramatic reveal, right? We would need that moment where things are so dark that this is the only way out, and Wax takes out the do not drink this until an emergency vial or whatever it said and downs it, and shit goes off.
And just but it would also just be a really nice way of taking what Autonomy said about this is when your potential gets unlocked, and be like, sort of proving it true, but also completely subverting the selfish aspect of it, saying, well, it's not his own death he's being faced with. It's, so yeah, it's a nice way of just skewing Autonomy's viewpoint there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we could do, now that you got me thinking about that, we could do the same for almost any character, although Wax is the one who hears that speech. But I was going to say, like Wayne, Steris, Marasi, anybody could end up in that same, like either their own death or somebody else's death, and that's when their true potential comes out. But I guess it wouldn't be as dramatic if it wasn't Wax who got to hear that speech.
Yeah, true. That said, though, like if we keep talking about Wayne possibly dying, I think if he does, I feel like it would be just an act of pure selflessness that he would do it, because I've gone on at length about Wayne in the past few books and how like a lot of his actions are sort of self-driven, even if he dresses them up a bit. So it would, if he were to die, I could totally see it being like the 100% sacrificing his life to save a child. So he could, die trying to save Max. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah. Okay. I think that you've got some interesting possibilities opened up there.
Yeah.
I guess we will find out before long. So speaking of, for next time, I'll go ahead and throw this out. We are going to read 7 more chapters, 58 through 64. And as was mentioned a little while ago, we're going to record our next 2 kind of back to back because I'm going to be in Paris for a week. So we will quickly move on to another 6 chapters after that. But for everyone else, hopefully it'll be seamless. In the meantime, let us move to emails and such. And we've got a couple emails that I want to read, and one of them we can finally read. We've had it since, when did this come in? November 17th is when a person sent this email. Oh my God. And it has a large section that says spoilers for chapter 55, which we've just read chapter 55. So we can finally
keep in mind November 17th was like the week the book came out.
Yeah. So this one is from Tom. Tom says, "Hey, Sanderlanche crew. I meant to do this a lot more, but I am weak. I can't hold myself back from tearing through this book. I don't know how you all do this every week. The only reason I haven't finished the book yet is because I'm listening in audio format, and there aren't enough hours in the day for me to get further into it without affecting my work or sleep schedule. I was tempted to speed up the narration a bit on my audiobook last night, but I'm not a fan of how unnatural it sounds, and I feel like I miss a lot of crucial details." Just pause there for a second. I can't keep track of audiobooks at normal speed. I can't imagine the people who do it at like double speed or whatever. He says, "Anyway, it feels like the Sanderlanche is starting to get underway now, and I thought I'd participate in some predicaments. I don't know if you will want to share this with the crew when you reach this point. I also don't know how far into the book you've gotten yet since you're doing the Patreon recordings. So I'm going to give a big old spoiler warning for anything prior to chapter 55 from this point on." So chapter 55 spoilers, we can finally read. "I'm getting some serious Cold War setup vibes from this book. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I hope Sanderson does something unique with it. I feel like I've seen the whole magic equals nuclear weapons trope a few too many times. Looking at you, Korra Spirit Vine weapons." Okay, that's true. "While I think there is something interesting and fundamentally human about our ingenuity bringing about technologies that will bring about our demise, I guess I just hope it doesn't become a remap of the Cold War conflict in the next era of Mistborn. I believe that next era, if memory serves, is supposed to be 80s-esque in technology, which if we're doing a Cold War would feel a bit on the nose." That's true. I hadn't thought of that, but I guess we'll see. I mean, I agree with him that at this point it feels like we may be moving towards a Cold War situation. He goes on, "So with that in mind, I want to put forward my predicaments, hoping that I'm not completely right or that Sanderson does things slightly differently than the way I've outlined. Don't get me wrong, I will read the heck out of the next series regardless, and I'll definitely enjoy it, like I've enjoyed his other works. I just hope it doesn't turn out exactly how I've predicted. I see the end of this series turning into an analog of the Second World War. The Autonomy Army / Set would be like the Axis powers, and then the Elantrians, Skadrians, and the Southern Skadrians begrudgingly end up teaming up against them once the worldwide threat becomes clear. Very similar to the uneasy alliance between the US and the USSR against the Axis powers in World War II. I feel like that's cutting out a lot of the other allies when you say that, but keep moving. The new Harmonium / Trellium bombs will be instrumental in defeating the invaders, but the Southern Skadrians will see the technology as an existential threat, and they'll begin working on their own version of the technology. That, combined with the threat of the reinvested bands and superior airship technology, would be the source of power behind their threat of mutually assured destruction. I don't have any more specifics than that, but I could totally see this playing out that way. I guess my predictions are vague enough that Sanderson could make them fit his story and still do something that makes it feel unique and different. Also, after Wayne's self-loathing monologue to not him and not Wax, he is totally not making it out of this book. It's a shame, really. I think he might be onto something with his investment ideas. The Noseball Club sounds intriguing, at least. So far, I think Sanderson has done a good job in this book to hang a lantern on the problematic aspects of Wayne's quirks. I don't know how he plans on resolving the character, but I suspect he is not going to make it out of the book. And then there's a bit of spoiler for stuff we haven't read that I won't go into, but he does say that he thinks that something later will be undercut severely if we read this book first, and so he thinks that we should not read this book right away. But I was also one of those people who thought that reading Secret History before Bands of Mourning was not the right move. You know your friends best. Wasing to the time of next, Tom. There's a lot in there.
Yeah, chock full of opinion.
Yeah, I don't. The Cold War thing is interesting. Once again, I don't know that I feel like we have enough space in the book for like the two countries to team up against an army together. But once again, it's the Sanderlanche crazy shit that we always think there's no way that this can all get wrapped up in time, and then somehow it does.
I don't know why you're using this we crap. We all know you've read the book.
Anybody else have thoughts on any of that?
Well, thank you for sharing your predictions as well, and for waiting so long for us to get to them. Pretty cool to hear other people's thoughts, and good job getting through the audiobook to get there.
Okay, thank you, Tom. We also have an email from Peter that I've been holding on to for a while, and it's very short, but you'll see why. This one came in December 13th, so still a good while ago. It says, "Hi, everyone. I'm sure by now you've come across Moonlight. Psst, it's Shy. Just want to make a couple points about her name. It could be a reference to the moon scepter that Hoyd stole from her. Perhaps more interestingly, it could be a dig at the people of Scadrial since they have no moon, and no one here will know what Moonlight is or have even heard the word moon. Anyway, carry on as you were." From Peter.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot that was what it was, that she got stole from her.
Yep. It would be funny if that was like her message to like Hoyd. It's like, yeah, Moonlight. I'm coming for you.
Oh no, the moon is coming for me. What's the moon gonna do?
Let's see. Okay, we got a couple more emails that we can read. These ones are actually newer that came in recently. So the first one is from Jacob. It says, "Hey Data, Jamie, Joe, and Dak. New listener from the UK here. I found your podcast about the time I finished The Lost Metal and have to say that I'm a big fan of the show. I've been a fan of the books for a while and always happy to hear new perspectives on them. I'm just coming up to the end of your reactions to Hero of Ages and can't wait for the reveal that Spook becomes king. Also, for when it finally..."
Oh man, you are in for a treat.
Yeah, what a reveal that was.
I feel like while people did have reactions to that, it wasn't as angry as a lot of people were expecting and maybe hoping for.
Well, here's the thing, man. When Brandon keeps shoving it further into the ridiculousn's with that character, it's like, now I just expect it. Next thing you're gonna tell me is that Spook he's actually Viking Pope. Like, that's what you're gonna tell me next. and I'm just gonna be like, yeah, I guess that's true.
I guess that's true. I'm not gonna fight it. Just okay.
Yeah, Viking Pope, sure. All right.
Also, for when it finally clicks who Hoyd is. I mean, he's Hoyd, but yeah, we did kind of figure out that he keeps showing up.
I mean, well, I guess he's farther back. I was like, yeah, I mean, he's Hoyd. That's his name.
Yeah, we don't really get to the fact that he is the same guy showing up over and over again until at least Secret History. So I guess that is a little bit after.
Oh, yeah, because even in Secret History, I just called him Sexy Drifter. I hadn't put it together yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he showed up by name in Final Empire, Hero of Ages, and Elantris.
Yep.
And then Era 2. By Era 2, we'd cottoned on, but
yeah.
Yeah, within the first era, Jamie had the theory that there's just like a bunch of Hoyds out there, and they have the Hoyd Academy or whatever.
The Hoyd Academy.
It's just the equivalent name of David or something. It's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, now they got Hoyd swag boxes. He's all over the place.
That's true. I got a Hoyd pin on my pin board.
I had a really stupid dream like once way back when we were talking about the Hoyd Academy, and it's just like. And I'm only reminded of it now because we've been watching so much Finding Nemo lately, but I just imagine like you got this room full of guys and they're all just saying Hoyd like the seagulls say mine.
Hoyd.
Hoyd.
Hoyd. Hoyd.
Hoyd.
Hoyd.
Hoyd.
Hoyd.
Hoyd.
Hoyd. Hoyd.
Oh gosh. Okay. So Jacob says, "Thanks for making my boring office job more fun. I'll let you know when I've binge listened enough that I've actually caught up. P.S. Data, wondering when you're planning on getting to the Stormlight books. They're my favorite ones. So looking forward to everyone's thoughts on that." Now, at this point, the number of Cosmere books that we have, or Cosmere stuff that we have that's not Stormlight, is getting real small. I've talked about
Warbreaker.
We're going to do White Sand next. I've talked about that. Warbreaker was what I put out that maybe we would do if we weren't doing Lost Metal right away. So that's also coming up. There's a short story. There's Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell. And there is Tress of the Emerald Sea. And I think that may be it. So that's
no other short stories?
I don't think there's any other Cosmere shorts that we haven't read.
Interesting.
Wow.
So
except for Stormlight. There's several Stormlight short stories.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that you may not have made this decision yet, but have you decided, would Tress be something we would read before getting into Stormlight, or would we have to wait?
I think that probably Tress will be one of those things that after we've read a Stormlight book or two, I'll be like, do you guys want to break from Stormlight? We can go read this and then come back if you're feeling like Stormlighted out, or we can just, if you're like, I got to know what happens next, we can move right into the next one. I think that's probably where Tress is going to end up in the plan.
Gotcha.
Okay.
But yeah, so
the other secret projects as well.
Right. We don't know what's gonna come of them. They may try to slip in before that, depending on after I read them where they feel like they go.
How many episodes do you estimate Warbreaker would take?
I have that charted out. 1 second. Warbreaker is going to be 15 episodes.
Okay, and White Sand?
White Sand, my plan at the moment is that we will start reading the prologue and 3 chapters, and then we'll do 3 chapters each time, which will be like 2 episodes. Each book, there's three graphic novels combined together into the omnibus for White Sand.
Okay, so like 6
each one has 6 chapters, so it'll be 2 episodes per book. But my plan was we're going to do those first 3, and then we'll see, is this a good length for an episode? So it may be shorter or longer than that after we've done the first 1 or 2, but that's my tentative plan, is 6 episodes.
Okay, but yes, estimating we did White Sand and Warbreaker, that's like 21 weeks. That's half a year already, in which case like a couple of other of the secret projects will have come out by that point, and you'll have read them, so you'll be able to judge by the time we get to the end of Warbreaker, assuming that we did those 2 back to back.
Yep, and I am as eager as anyone for us to get to Stormlight, but at the same time, I want to get there with the correct knowledge base that we should have going into that. So it's not a situation where I'm like, we'll throw Warbreaker back because I really want to get into Way of Kings. There's a reason that I planned out the order that I planned out to begin with, and I'm going to stick to that. As best I can. Obviously, White Sand ended up way different than where it was, and I think after we read White Sand, then you guys will understand why I wanted to do it before we did Era 2. But, we weren't given that option. So, let's see. Back to that was the end of his email, and we have one more from Talon. Hi, I recently found your podcast this year, and I'm already up to Bands of Mourning. I had to skip Elantris because I couldn't get the book. I'm planning to go back when I read it anyway. Love your podcast, sincerely. And then they sent a follow-up email that was like, hi, also I would like you guys to play the tabletop Mistborn games. That would be difficult.
Yeah. Simply because, we're in countries across the world from each other. That I don't know that that's something that's super feasible for us.
Theoretically, maybe we could try to use Tabletop Simulator. I don't know if they have the Mistborn game in there, but that would even be difficult because we'd need, computers that can run that.
When the lockdowns first started for COVID, a couple of friends of ours, we ended up playing Pandemic. Ironically, over we played it over Zoom, but the way we did it's like we both had a copy of the game, so it was us and another couple that we're friends with. We both had a copy of the game, so we each on our end set the board up, and our side we controlled the cards, and then on their side we just said, okay, you need to put the cubes down on these cities, so they were able to follow along, and we were playing the same game, and we just had 2 identical boards set up on either end, and we were just calling out directions. So it's like it's possible to do.
Yeah.
But then we get the time zone factor, which sometimes it's hard enough to record an episode.
Yeah.
As the last few weeks have been evidence of.
Right. So yeah, it's something that We could try. I mean, I own the Mistborn board game. The Mistborn House War is what it's called, and the expansion. And I've never actually been able to play the expansion because nobody I played with really enjoyed the game. And I don't remember if we talked about. I don't remember if we talked about that on the show before, but it's Mistborn House War is a game where you are playing one of the great houses in Luthadel,
Sure.
and so everybody's one of the great houses, and you're in competition with each other to try to gain favor with the Lord Ruler and to try to stop the Ska uprising. So you're trying to overcome problems, and the characters from the book are the problems. It's like clubs. This is what you have to overcome him, and so on and so forth. And so the people that I know that I played games with who actually knew Mistborn and liked it, they're like, but I don't want to be like the bad guys. And then other people who didn't know Mistborn, when we actually played the game, the game is based like it's very difficult for one person to overcome any problems with their own resources. So you're supposed to have to wheel and deal with each other to like, I want to overcome this problem. So if you give me this many resource, I'll do this for you, or blah, blah, blah. You get this much of the credit, basically, because overcoming each problem gets you cred with the Lord Ruler, favor. You get favor tokens that say you're this much in favor with the Lord Ruler for overcoming this problem. So you're like, hey, if you help me do this, you'll get this much of the favor for this many, whatever. And so you're supposed to be negotiating with each other. But the thing is, the game can also end with the uprising winning. When the Vin card comes up, the game is over, essentially. And depending on how everything is, either the Lord Ruler stays in control, and whoever has the most favor with the Lord Ruler is the winner because you're closest to the Lord Ruler and he is still the God King. Or if the Ska uprising is successful, then whoever has the most disfavor or the least favor with the Lord Ruler actually wins because your house has distanced themselves from the Lord Ruler enough that they don't fall when the Lord Ruler falls. And
That's weird, man.
The problem comes when somebody at the table figures out that it's very easy to get disfavor by just not helping anybody. And then everyone starts failing everything. And then everyone is suddenly competing to have the most disfavor. And the game, the whole point of the game is the negotiation. And then nobody's negotiating because you don't want to succeed at overcoming any of the obstacles. And so if everyone is not really on board with trying to play the game like it's intended to be played, it's very, very easy to break by just being like, nah, I'm not going to do anything. And then it's not any fun. And I definitely have had somebody in my group that was immediately spotted that and was like, yep, I'm doing that. And once everybody else realizes what they're doing, everybody has to do the same thing. And so it was not it was not the most fun. And I'm hoping they may have fixed that with the expansion, but nobody wanted to play the expansion because nobody liked the game. So honestly, their Call to Adventure, the Stormlight Archive, is a much more fun Cosmere game. And if we were going to play a game, I think that is the one that I would try to get us to play because it's actually a lot of fun. That was the point of that whole thing that I went through, was that there's another game out there and it's better.
Well, what house did you like to play as when you played?
I don't even remember. They all have like specialties. Like I think House Hastings had like weapons and there was food, and House Venture has like adium resources and stuff like that. So we only played once or twice, and it's been a while now, so I don't even remember that well.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't know that I see us playing the Mistborn game as Talon was suggesting, but I could see us trying to play some. There's also the tabletop role-playing game, which is supposed to be pretty good, and maybe that's what they meant when they said the tabletop Mistborn games, because I wouldn't mind trying to like an RPG session with the Mistborn thing. I think that people might enjoy that. They even have different era setups where you can do era 1 or era 2 characters and stuff. So that could be fun. And that was when we first were talking about doing a Patreon. That was my first thought as a potential extra, was like, maybe we'll set up like we'll record like an RPG session and put that out there. But as Dak mentioned, it's hard enough to get every week an episode recorded, let alone setting up a time to record a whole other thing. So yeah, I don't know that we will be able to do that ever, but I think that the Stormlight game is probably the one that I see the most, and we'd probably do it like Dak suggests, where I get them a copy and we can do it at the same time on both ends, because that's also a game that's available and that's not hard to learn, and would require a lot less work ahead of time than like any RPG does, where you got to create characters and all that. So anyway, those are our emails. We're actually the inbox is clear for the first time since November, when we got that email that I've been saving since then. So Yay. Thank you everyone who sent emails. If you'd like to send an email, the address is thesanderlanche@gmail.com. find us on Instagram and Facebook and Patreon, where I am up to, what are we up to? This week, the last one to come out was chapters 25 through 28 of Tress of the Emerald Sea. So for anyone wanting to hear my reactions to that, since it'll probably be a little while before we get to it on this show, that is what's going up on our Patreon. Like I said, we're doing 7. I said 7, right? Yeah, 7 more chapters for next time, 58 through 64. Music by Miracle of Sound. That's important to get in there. So yeah, if you're following along, we are approaching the end of this book. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this as much as we have. I quite like this book. I don't know where I'd put it if I was trying to rate them in comparison with all the other Mistborn books, but we're moving into Sanderlanche territory. Things are about to get dramatic. So come back next time for to see where that goes. Yep. Thank you to everyone who emailed, who hangs out on the Discord. If you're interested in joining the Discord, there's a link on our website. Thank you to all our patrons, everybody who's listening, and wasing to the time of next. Kolo?